husband and I just got back from the Oregon coast where we celebrated our 7-year wedding anniversary. Now that we're back, I wanted to share some tips on how to create a neurodivergent friendly wedding. As you know, I am autistic and my husband has ADHD. Even though neither of us were diagnosed officially at the time of our wedding, we created a wedding that benefited both of our individual needs. So I'd like to share that with you today in case any of you are getting married soon. Hopefully this will be a good, helpful suggestion of what you can do to make your wedding more comfortable and accommodating for you and your loved ones. The first thing we took into consideration was who we wanted to invite and how many people max we wanted. Both of us have very large families and large friend groups that we've known for years. I personally am very uncomfortable around large groups of people and wanted to keep it very small. We were also on a tight budget, so that worked as well. Overall, we only ended up inviting 80 people, and out of that 80, I think 40 showed up, which was the perfect amount. Also, as far as inviting people, we did not feel that we had to invite people out of obligation. So there are several people in our immediate family that have caused us trauma and we don't get along with, so we did not invite them. We only wanted people there that supported us and gave us unconditional love and that we felt good feelings towards, and so that's what we did. The second thing we took into consideration were our special interests, which is very important for autistic individuals. My husband and I both have a love and appreciation of everything outdoors and nature. We go on hikes and camping trips all throughout the year, and so for us it made sense to get married outside in the middle of the woods. I had our friend make custom wedding invitations for us with our portraits, and we had her include Oregon native species of Douglas fir, trillium, foxglove, and a couple other things, but they turned out really beautiful, and I'm so glad we had her do that for us. We also chose 2 locations for our wedding, which I will explain why we did this, but we took our photos in front of a waterfall that we had scouted earlier that year along the Columbia River Gorge, and then we had our ceremony and reception over in a little park area towards Mount Hood. The big thing that we did differently from any wedding I've ever been to is we actually split our wedding into 2 different days. On the first day, we did our photos and said our vows, and then the second day we had the actual ceremony, and then we had the reception following that. And that was because I get overwhelmed easy, and I just didn't know how it was possible to fit all those things in one day without being completely burned out or ending up in tears halfway through or just being completely exhausted. So we chose to break them up, and I am so thankful we did that because even on 2 separate days it was still at points pretty overwhelming. So I'm glad we had a buffer to do vows and photos on one day, then we had a day in between, and then we did our ceremony a couple days later, and I think that worked out really well. On the first day, we had a professional photographer take wedding photos for us. We found her up in Portland, and then we also chose to say our vows on this day in front of Wakena Falls in the Columbia River Gorge, and we did our vows in front of just our friend that was both bridesmaid and best woman, and then a couple of our family members. I get very uncomfortable in front of a lot of people, and I felt like we both felt like the vows were very intimate and were really only for us, so we actually didn't want a lot of people listening to our vows, so we chose to do that only in front of a couple people, and it actually worked out because the waterfall was so loud behind us that only we could hear each other. And afterwards, everyone was like, "We couldn't hear you at all," which to me that was fine because it wasn't that the vows were not for them; it was for us. So I'm glad we chose to do that. The only thing about that location that was distracting is it was along a popular hiking path. So while we were doing our vows, people on the path were kind of rude and didn't wait to cut across. They just kind of did it in front of us. So that kind of like took me aback a little, but otherwise that was really fun. And then after that, we just had some hors d'oeuvres and we had champagne because we were still drinking at that point. I think I mentioned that we haven't been drinking the last 2 years. My wedding dress that I chose to wear that day, I found on Etsy. It was a vintage tablecloth that someone had made into a dress that I thought was really cute. And for me, I wanted it to be loose and easy to walk in since we were hiking, and I don't like tight clothing, so that worked really well for me. And we kept it casual because we're both pretty casual. So my husband just had some nice slacks and a white shirt and tie. We didn't want to do too formal because neither of us are too formal. We took a break in between the vows and the ceremony and reception days, and we spent the day at Trillium Lake near Mount Hood, and that was really nice to get out and have some fun before the stress of the next day set in. So we had our wedding ceremony in Wildwood Recreation Site in a little forested area underneath a tree with only about 20 of our guests. We chose to keep it really intimate and only invite less than 24 people to the actual ceremony because we just wanted to keep it quaint and very intimate, especially since I get sensory overload and just didn't want everybody watching us. So only a few people were there for that. But what was really fun is we had one of our really good friends do the ceremony for us as our officiant. And one of the other ways that we added in our special interests is the three of us are very into the Flight of the Conchords, this really cool folk band from New Zealand. They had a show on HBO if you are not familiar with it. Very funny, but we always joke about that. And so we kind of had our ceremony Flight of the Conchords themed. And this was actually our friend's idea, who was the officiant. He in the show there's the band and then they have a band manager. So we were the band and he was the band manager. And in the show they do roll call where everyone has to say if they're present or not. And so he did that and took roll call. He would call my name and then you have to answer present, and then my husband's name present, and then he like called the guests if they were present, so they had to answer too. So it was really cute. He did a really awesome job, and it was really special to have him do our ceremony for us. Oh, and we also, our walk up to the ceremony and then leaving the ceremony site, we were playing Flight of the Conchord music, and so it was a fun way to add a special interest and get to share it with our guests. The other thing that was fun is just having like our close immediate family involved. Some of the kids wanted to stand up there with us when we did the ceremony, and it was just, there were no seating or arrangements or anything. Everyone was standing in like a semicircle around us, and it was fun to be out there with them. For the ceremony, one of the big things I didn't want to do was being walked down the aisle. I am not very traditional and never really wanted that. I think it's mostly because I don't have a good relationship with the men in my family, especially my dad, so I didn't want to do that. I've always been independent, and that was not something I ever really wanted. So we both just stood up there at the ceremony when it started. We didn't have anyone walk down the aisles up there. I also decided to wear a different wedding dress that day just because I felt like the first dress was more formal for photos, but I wanted to be pretty casual for our wedding. And I have a habit of changing my mind as far as outfits and clothing that I wanted to wear, so I brought this dress as a backup. So then after the ceremony, we went back to the main part of the camp where we had reserved a covered area that had a fireplace and several benches that we could use as tables and chairs, so we didn't have to rent anything. And that's when the remaining of our guests showed up for the reception. The rest of the day was really casual. We told everyone just enjoy yourselves. There's no set schedule. We didn't eat at a certain time. We didn't do speeches. We didn't do a cake cutting. We chose not to do any dancing because, again, I don't like people perceiving me, and I always feel awkward dancing in front of people when people are watching me. So we just kept it really casual, which I think worked for me because that took off the pressure of being perceived by others and like having to perform. And then I think as far as the ADHD side, that kind of like let you just choose to do what you want, so you weren't feeling like you were forced to do something if you didn't. We brought lawn games for people to play. There was a playground for the kids, so if they got bored, they could just run over there and play. We tried to keep it family friendly and just let people decide what they wanted to do. We did encourage people, if they wanted to take pictures with us at any point, just come grab us, and we would like run over because we had like a photo booth set up. So I just, we just let people do what they want. My mom catered the whole event, which was awesome of her. She's a really good cook, and because she was cooking, I knew I wouldn't have any sensory food issues because I know what she cooks and I know what it tastes like, and I enjoy it. So that was nice. So overall, we had a really fun time for our wedding. Even with all these preparations and new traditions that we started, it was still really stressful. Like even with these accommodations that we made for ourselves, it was still unbelievably stressful, and I think no matter what it would have been, but I just can't imagine how much more stressful it would have been if we had done it the traditional way, because back then I had very, very high anxiety, and it just like it would keep me up at night. I don't think I slept that whole week leading up to the wedding. I was just anxious about everything going perfectly. If we were able to go back and do it all over again, I think there were a few things that we would change. One of them for me would have been the location. I would have wanted it closer to home. It was 3 hours from our house, so we ended up renting a cabin for the full week, which that was great. But looking back, I realized that our guests had to travel 3 hours to get there, most of them. And our intention is like have them either camp or get hotel rooms up there too. But I think a lot of people ended up leaving early because they had to drive back home. So that was one thing I had not considered, that not everyone or most people would not want to drive all that way. And so our wedding was pretty short, but that was okay. But that is one thing I would consider next time, is having it closer to home. The other thing that we would have changed is the path leading through the woods where we got married under the tree. That was perfect, but we did not take the same path to get back to the reception area, and we accidentally lost 2 grandmas, a mom, and an aunt in the forest for about an hour, because they left before the rest of us, and they took the wrong path into a different campsite that was not connected to where we were. So we sent rescue parties to go find them, and that took about an hour. So by the time the rest of the guests showed up to the reception, everyone was stressed out trying to find our missing family members. So it's funny now, we joke about it all the time, but in the moment it was like seriously stressful, because they were major people of our wedding, and we just lost them in the woods. I think the other thing I would have changed is not worry so much about decorations and making the covered reception area look great. I think I put a lot of emphasis in that, and really we didn't really do a whole lot with the decorations after all, so it was kind of like I worried and stressed about it for nothing. And yeah, that was our wedding experience in a nutshell, and I hope that helped some of you who are planning a wedding in the near future. If you are, congratulations. And I hope that you too can make it sensory friendly for you and make it accommodate your needs, whether you're neurodivergent or not. I think it's awesome that more people are doing their weddings the way they want to do it instead of the traditional way, because really it's about you and your partner and the love you share. So it should definitely be what brings you guys joy. So those are my tips. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you very soon.